I'm Patricia Thane, co-founder of Private AI, and this is the Data Frontier podcast. Here we explore the frontier of data innovation, where unstructured data meets real-world applications. Each episode brings together builders, engineers, data scientists, product leaders, and domain experts who are shaping the future of intelligence systems. From NLP and privacy to interoperability and AI-driven workflows, we unpack the tools, challenges, and breakthroughs, transforming raw data into smarter systems, faster insights, and better solutions. It is such a pleasure to have Dr. Anyi Li with us today. Dr. Li leads a multidisciplinary team of mathematicians, physicists, engineers, data scientists, and operational specialists dedicated to transforming clinical workflows through artificial intelligence, operational research, and big data at the Memorial Sloan Cancer Center in New York City. Anyi, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Really excited to talk about your fascinating work. To start, would you like to tell us about your work on large language models for cancer progression detection with the model called Woollie?
Yeah. The idea is that if you look at the open source models, and they don't have too much domain knowledge, but for the closed source the models, and you don't have too much control because of the patient privacies. So why not win a model by using the cancer progression notes? And so we'll figure out whether the large language model can read him as a doctor to give you your idea what's the cancer progress. So we train this model. We using close to 40,000 notes and 400 patients records. Have been trained a couple months and with our GPU clusters. So the results are pretty fantastic. In terms of the accuracies, we can reach to 90, 91, 92 for specific disease. And beyond just to answer the question whether tumor has been progressed or not, we find that there's generative features you can talk to the model. Model can give you the more insights of the disease, such as the cancer progression pathways. You can see that breast cancers, they start with the breast, but they tend to metastasis to the brain or the central neural systems. So this is something we found, the large language model is not just a simple classifier, and they actually have a deep knowledge. So that would be useful in the clinic, maybe help the clinicians to guide the treatment or maybe some kind of suggestions as an assistant role rather than the replacement.
Fascinating. So, could you tell us a bit more about the data that was used to train the model?
Yeah, we have this data that is a collector. It's actually a group effort from MSK and other hospitals. It also gets some contribution from the pharmaceutical companies. So this data sites, and I'm gonna just use a subset of that. And so they have all the clinic notes, and they have outcomes. They also have the genomics. So the goal of this data is used for the drug discovery and drug development for the pharmaceutical companies. But I use as a subset is special is radiology impressions. And so the radiologists like to write down, the tumor, whether it has a response or tumor has been progression or maybe tumor actually shrink. So that part it's purely text based, and I think it's a good use case for the large language models.
Got it. So, you use purely the text based aspect, not images, not genomic
Not
data.
images, yeah, not the genomics, yeah.
Is it something you'll be working on in the future to integrate
Well,
more out?
it depends on the use case. At one point, I do think maybe imaging and text work together. But I actually ban this idea. So when you actually do, you realize that the human, the radiologists actually read the image pretty well.
Okay.
So of course they have their some kind of subjectives. They have their human part into there could be some kind of a little bias over there, but overall they interpret the image into the text. So if you have the image and the text, my gut feeling is like you may not improve that much. You need to give the weight, right? How much you trust the image, how much you trust the text base. But I think in the macroscope of the tumor, genomics could be the next modalities to add into, and even pathology, right? Pathology, look at the slides. This type of images could be better assistant to the final determinations.
And would love your opinion both on the infrastructure for handling the text data and the infrastructure for handling genomic data for future work.
Yeah.
Whether you think that we are at a point where we could easily use this data, and whether we're at a point where we can collect data for these tasks at a larger scale.
I think technology-wise, it's already there. And because we collect that and we collaboration with other hospitals also collect that. So I think the challenge is really the privacy and the sharing between different hospitals or even generally beyond the hospital, right? So if you're a data scientist working in your set project, or maybe you're working with other companies, so how do you use this data set to make your models, trainable, align with the big data centers? I think that's the talent. That's a challenge. There's some solutions, and one of the things it's leading by Dr. Saurabh Shah here at MSK's. It's a federated learning. So rather than you move the data, you actually move the models. So he's leading this from the MSK side. Is the Cancer AI Alliance. So that's one of the revenue for the collaboration. Another is to make this data more generally available by doing this de-identification. You remove all the sensitive data and publish as a subset. But for that approach, it's a challenge. The the text itself it's actually include a lot of useful information and even patient itself, let's say gender, age, right? The description of the patient specific features. But if you all remove this, I don't know how much is going to bias your training. So that could be one of the challenges to just do DID the data and publish that available. So we're still working on that. I think that's a challenge from the technical side to collect and distribute. I don't think that's a challenge. It's more like a governance, privacy, and policy.
Got it. And what about with regards to data quality?
Well, so it depends. It depends what do you want to do. So if you just look at, the data set I use actually is manually curated by so many radiologists, the clinician, they clean this up. That's a typical way to do the data science research if you want to use high quality data. But you will find that if you just pull the data directly from EHR, electronic health record, that's probably everybody think, okay, EHR is the big dump of this data source. If you give me everything, and so I can give you a better result. So my direct answer to that is no, because there's so many low quality data. The way the physicians use EHR, it's purely for recording, and so typing anything maybe needed by the orchestration billing. So they are not putting too much thoughts into the way they were typing. That's one thing. Second, that you will find even the data set is huge, but you may find there's a lot of duplications. For examples, so if you are the cancer patient, you usually see the surgeon first, right? Surgeon will be your first doctors, and he or she will take a look at and put on the notes. This is all the tumors I removed. This is the procedures. When medical oncologists will say this, okay, surgeon already get this, but in order to make my notes complete, I will copy the surgeon's notes into my notes. And then I will put, oh, this is my assessment. And when the pathologists are doing that, so pathology may be a little bit independent. So they will write all the notes about the specimen they will get from the surgeons and their diagnosis. But look at the final follow up with the medical oncologist or maybe radiation oncologist. They will say, "Oh, I have all this. I will put his patient story. I put all in my notes." So you have all these previous notes from different subspecialties, and even the patient come back, and the doctor will see, I want to put all the patient history. Either they direct a copy or they do some kind of summarization into my notes. So there's so many duplication. This is what make your large language model so confused. So what do you mean? So that's one way I would see that before you train any models, either manually curate the data or you use some ways, use large language model to clean the data first, to form this longitudinal patient record. You clearly have those biomarkers, all the text that you need, and before you train anything.
Do you find that the duplication ends up making the model put more weight on the duplicated words? Is that the
I
problem?
I think so. So it's a similar as a human. So if you look at the I think last year Stanford published a paper. They mentioned large language model is very good if you put the critical message in the beginning or in the end,
Mm.
and nothing in the middle. So it's like this. So imagine if you have a clinical notes, and so all the critical information you need, it's in the middle, but in the top and in the bottom, it's basically copy over, or maybe something new in the top. But most of the things is a copy over. The model is just so confused. And this is actually dominant. So model will not figure out. So what do you mean? Why is a tumor? It's there, but then tumor disappeared and tumor happened again.
Mhm.
Which one you are talking about, right? Maybe something is removed. Maybe during the chemotherapy it's disappeared, and maybe you are talking the tumor at the beginning, but you copy over the notes to form a patient story at the end.
So fundamentally, even the historical order of things is what is lacking.
Right.
Makes sense. Have you come across any work that does clean up data well in such circumstances?
Yes. Before I joined MSK, I used to work at IBM. We actually have a team doing the terminology and the mappings and doing the cleanup. I think that back then, that's more like 10 years ago, and there's a lot of regular expression, pattern recognition, and all we just completely drop the old data, and so we just put everything as the latest union. This is all the data that we have right now, right? That's the snapshot of the patient, and so you need to make your snapshot maybe every couple of months or every couple of years, depends on lifespan of the patient or the disease you want to track. But I think right now, and I think the researcher tend to use more like a language model driven the cleanup. So one way you can do is that you can use a bird model to look at every nodes and extract all these biomarkers, a specific field you want. And you follow this as a patient story. And then you do this deduplication at a late, right? That's one way approach. Last year, I actually have this idea. I was talking with one of the researchers at MSK. We're thinking maybe a large language model can do a smaller summarization for each nodes, and then you do this deduplications at end. Similar as a bird model, but it's more sophisticated. You can think of this more like a multi-agent structure if you put it in this way. So you have a specific agent for pathology, agent for radiology, agent for the medical oncology. You do the extraction, you do the summarization, and then you have another agent to find this deduplication process and then make them as a patient stories. At the end, probably you still need a human in the loop to verify, yes, this is all the biomarkers happen here, 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 here. Maybe in the future, so you have another models that can work with whatever the models you have to find all this together. I know we have this data science initiatives at MSKs. There's some initiative and people also trying to do this, but it's purely from the research aspect. But if you do that in the clinic, there will be another challenge because, as I said, the clinical data is even messier, and a lot of things it's not really. It's purely for billing purpose.
So, what about the ambient listening data? Is that something that you see as an extra level of complexity when it comes to problems with deduplication?
That's actually a very good point. In our hospital, we just start. We just start to collect this the voice, right, in the clinical visit. First of all, I do see that data as maybe valuable because, as I said, so when the physician put into the typed notes, they're already doing the processing.
Mhm.
There are no, okay, what's my audience? Who is going to read my notes? Or if purely for billing purpose, I already trim everything. I just want to this, go in this, I order this, go back to this, right? So that may not be useful. But during this conversation with the patient, there is some kind of thought process. AI is capture all this. So I feel that that could be another, the revenue to extract the knowledge from the physician and the patient. But of course, there's a lot of duplication. When we're talking, a lot of things may not be useful. But if AI can identify during this ambient, approach, I think that would be good. Second, I would see that beside this, if we can collect another data source like email or conversation between the physicians, that I think that would be also very useful. So if the physician hasn't decided how to treat the patient, they may consult with another physicians, or through these discussions between their coworkers or the colleagues, they will find, oh, we have some kind of consensus, we can do some things. That capture the thought process from
Mhm.
the physicians, plus all this structured data or lab result. They'll have the full patient stories, good for large language model to understand.
That would be fascinating. One could say that data quality infrastructure needs work. The infrastructure for training models, for storing data that's set up, that's ready to go whenever you need it. What about infrastructure for predictions in the clinical space?
Yeah, so very good questions. Train models is pretty expensive. Even my team trained Woollie models. I sustain using like a 64 GPU for a week. For research, that's quite a lot of resource. I'm not talking about with Google, Meta, right? They have infinite resource basically. But for the researcher, this is already quite a lot. We need to train the models, or somehow you collaborate with big tech companies to build agentic or RAG-based the models. You can answer your questions, but all this, have some kind of infrastructure behind it. But in the clinical usage, I would see there's two foldings. One is how quickly you can fetch in the data and really help the physician make a decision well through this clinical workflow. The clinicians actually very busy. They see patient maybe 20 patient per day or maybe even 30 patient per day. And they could like this 5 minutes, I go on. So how much the model can help or make a decision at this time and also consumed by the human is really depend on the structure. But I think, for the current all the models optimized and in a way they can retrieve the data very quickly. And there's some smaller language models, which is I'm actually following this. It's very good. You can run as your desktop or maybe some kind of smaller cloud-based, approach that can be give you the answer very quickly. The second approach is the goal you want to reach, right? Do you want to help the patient, help the physicians go through this workflow during the day, or you want to help them to draft the notes and to influence or talk discussion with their coworkers? So that can be doing offline, right? You don't need to be online. So the infrastructure requirement can be more like a massive upload batch way rather than this real time. I think it's really depends on use case.
Is there any work that you would be really excited to see in production?
You can think there's two ways to help the medicine by using AI. One way is to really identify this nuance, find a disease pathway, help a diagnosis, and maybe drug discovery. But the challenge of that is how accurate the model and how much trust between the physicians and even the trust between the patient with the AI. So there's a lot of researcher and findings go whether that's good. Another ways I'm thinking it's more hands-on, you can actually make it work, is to reduce all this administrative work. Some kind of low-hanging fruit, such as I want to get the patient summary from system A, system B, system C put together. And then before I see the patient, I have this on my hands, right? Or I decide to treat the patient like this, but I need to gather this document and send to the CCOC, chart coordinator, office coordinator, and call the patient, schedule the things, right, to come back. All this work, I think AI is ready to go. So that's my team. It's put a lot of efforts and engineer effort how do we do this a low hanging fruit with an administrative? Some things it's actually done by chart coordinator or even administrative, or maybe something need a little bit of medical background from maybe resident or maybe fellow, but all this is tedious work. How AI connect them together as a patient story in the middle. It's more like a doctors, all the administrative stuff using AI. Okay, I want you to do all this. You need to do A, B, C, D step. And AI or agent, I would see more like an agent, agentic AI. Go grab all this, make a decision, and then do the works and come back as a human. What's the next step? Right? So that can actually free the people, free the physicians from all the things that they were supposed to do and focus on the patient. I think that's some things I hope I can see that, happening right now and it can be pushed in the clinic very quickly. Why all the things I think, maybe phone call, conversation with the patient education, short message, and we do a lot of things manually. I think this is really the shining from the generative AI, right? It's very easy to do. Let's see, if I want you to prepare for the colonoscopy, rather than to read all the notes, you have your chatbot next to you, know your medical record. Now you start talking, okay, let me educate you, follow me. This is something, how do you prepare for the colonoscopies? Oh, this is diagnosis, and the patient need to talk to the doctors and need to collect some data. But can the AI go in first, collect this data before the physician see the patient? I'm hoping this can really reduce all the burdens from the clinicians, improve the efficiencies, and also bridge the gap between the infinity of patient but limited number of physicians. AI in the middle can be a very good mediator to help to organize the entire workflow.
And you had named privacy as one of the major bottlenecks for the other work. This administrative work sounds like privacy might not be a bottleneck because you're not using direct patient data for a lot of the tasks.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the ways to think. But if you want to do that better, you'd better to make it customized.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want like a chat GPT is like, I know there's, I think yesterday somebody sent me that actually there's a lot of patient, maybe 40% or 50% patient actually using chat GPT to upload their notes and trying to ask what does that mean? How do I deal with that? What does this diagnosis mean? But you feel this general models, they can hallucinate, they can give you some kind of false results. So that back to the first talk we have, either fine-tune the models or maybe some kind of RAG-based system. It's customized. Make this models more aligned with you. They know you. They can talk to you specifically, but there's a guardrail above this, right? You're not replace physician to make any decision. It's purely tell you what is diagnosis, what are you going to do, or the physician ask a model to tell you. I think that part will touch privacies. Model need to know the patient, so there must be some kind of protection and guardrail rather than make this generally available. But you're right. There's some things. Let's see, some scan something, right? So gather this information and may probably not touch privacies, but eventually the models need to deal with the patient record. So there is privacy involved at the end, must be.
There's a huge hunger from patients to be able to have this
Yeah.
access to information at their fingertips. Do you see research hospitals, teams like yours, playing a role in providing some safer alternative to ChatGPT?
A very good question. I think this is maybe somehow touching either EHR, like Epic, those big companies, or maybe some kind of startup, or maybe the group like my group inside the hospital. So rather than you upload your charts into ChatGPT, you basically give this data free to OpenAI. They can use that to train whatever they want, right? So they may come up something useful. They know more, but they still not the domain expertise.
Mhm.
So I think that's the opportunities that either EHR vendors or us or startups collaborate with the hospitals to customize this rather than you go to ChatGPT, you just go to us, right? You're the patient. We know better about you, not just the notes. We know your blood work. We know your genomics. We know all your images. So can the AIs specifically, let's see, for MSK, help the MSK patient navigate of this complex work, right? Facing the cancer diagnosis is very, very tough. It's not just like you have a cold, right? Doctors say that let's go, just take a Adderall, you're done, right? There's so many things, and I think that's the opportunity.
Mhm.
I don't know whether Epic is going to do, but some things my teams definitely think about it. So we are working more like a physician to physician, reduce the friction for their daily workflow. But similar is that we can expose that to the patient, right? This is something we already know you. You can chat with us and we give you more. My team is doing radiation oncology. And one thing I'm thinking by prepare the patient ready for the radiation treatment, that could be one of the approach, right? The doctors already see you. Some patients have concern or maybe scared. So what is radiation? How much is going to impact me? And so what am I going to do? So this part of patient education conversations, usually through the chart coordinator or the nurse. But with the AI, we probably have a 24/7 assistant next to you that will tell you, okay, this is what the radiation looks like. For the next couple of weeks, you're going to do the simulations and someone doing this, and they will draw the contour, will finish the plan, and will bring you back. For every day you come to this machine, they radiate you. You may feel a little bit of pain. You may have some kind of internal bleeding. You may have some kind of like a tan on your skin, but don't worry, this is all okay. I think that will be very good to prepare the patient, reduce the risk when you bring the patient back, and then reduce the time to prepare the patient. So sometimes the patients are really nervous. They don't sit tight. The radiation is like you have to be fix your position. And the patient may be nervous. I know there are some cases like they treat the prostate cancer and the patient actually peed on the machine and that caused some kind of damage. All this can be done by AI, do the education, prepare. That's also part of this administrative work, right? Um, I think it's opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about the kinds of information that these chatbots might be providing to patients, there must be a line that you're thinking of where it is informational, like WebMD, but more
Yeah.
conversational, to medical device where you actually have to get FDA
Yeah.
approval. How do you think about that balance?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. I don't have a direct answer. I would say this is more like a gray zone. Think about ChatGPT. Patient upload their medical record into ChatGPT. They ask the answer. I don't think FDA regulates ChatGPT.
Hmm.
And then I don't think OpenAI actually trying to make ChatGPT as a medical device to apply for the FDA approval. I don't think so. So even in their marketing sales, they do see that so this is maybe helpful, but I think they should be very careful. How do you stay that way, right? So you're not replacing doctor, you're not medical device, you don't have any FDA approval, but it's like yeah, that's your a companion, right? So somebody may know a little bit medical domain. You ask for help. It's more like ask my neighbor, ask my friend. So you have go through this. What do you think,
Hmm.
right? So so that's I'm thinking this is more like a consumer side. But what we just are talking about, and maybe from the EHR or startup or maybe the group like my group inside, that should be more regulated in the way is that you have a guardrail around your model. What you can see, what you cannot see, that should be there. And we should be let the patient know, this models is probably more trustable compared to ChatGPT because we know better about you. But this model may not be that creative. This internal model will be more conservative and purely done this education or just message passing to the patient. So there will be more work to do. If you look at EHR, I don't think the FDA actually treated EHR as a medical device.
Hmm.
So there's some kind of push in the Congress, in United States. They're trying to regulate, but I don't think they do. So if you put this as that category, it's more like you use EHR, right? So if suppose you are the Epic users, Epic has a my chart. You log into, you see all the notes, everything. It's purely the notes. You interpret that. You understand that one. Similar, the AI or chatbot from the Epic, they may just tell, this is what I explained, this is what I'm understanding, but nothing beyond that. So that maybe you can get away from this FDA approval, but maybe FDA think this is more smarter, right? Intelligent system. I need some kind of regulation rather than just purely notes passing.
That makes sense. Is there a difference in a chatbot like this, like Woollie, for example, if you were to make it physician facing versus patient facing, how you would treat whether or not it's a medical device?
I think, physician facing definitely need to be more regulated as a medical device.
Really?
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think, yeah, because, here's the way I phrase in this way, right? So what is medical device? So medical device measure something, collect something, and all the physicians' decision based on the data they collected.
Mhm.
Look at your microscope, right? Look at your scanners. And if the information you give to the physician is wrong, you bias the decision making, right? So you will change entire outcomes.
Mhm.
So there's a responsibilities of this device to make sure everything has been regulated, validated, and a cross check between the humans. Look at pathology. Pathologists, they usually use the microscope. Look at this slice. So the WSI whole slice image, it's actually using purely for research or archive purpose before the pandemic. And now FDA approved a lot of scanners, and the pathologist can actually make a diagnosis based on the digital image. So the pathologist can work remotely or work anywhere. But that responsibility shift from the pathologist by looking at a microscope to the scanners. So that's FDA step in. Similar as AI, if you use to give the data or some kind of analysis or diagnosis help to the physicians, that should be regulated. One example is, so you heard this startup Page AI recently just acquired by Tempus. They are the first one have the FDA approval for their AI models. I think to find a lesion for the prostate cancer. That's a harder push, but they open a door so that the physician use that to find the lesions and maybe they missing or they do the pre-screening.
Mhm.
So that's I'm thinking patient facing probably need less compared to the physician facing because eventually I think the current policy of governance is based on human. The final decision making it's a human. This is all a system, but I want to make sure that all the data I get is correct and reflect what's happening in the patient.
That makes sense. It's not the answer I expected, but it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And when it comes to model training, are you doing any work on outcomes-based reinforcement learning?
Not yet. My focus is more make this agentic AI or RAG based, help the physicians to do all this administrative work.
Mhm.
So I think that's more like a pinpoint. If you work inside the hospitals, you can feel that, or maybe you will hear a lot of physicians complain that so there's so many clicks, so many burdens, documentation burdens, so many hands-off and communications. That's the major part. So that's my team is also, part of my goal is reduce all this. So there's two approach of the AI in medicine. One is this diagnosis outcomes and driven the new therapeutical, treatment. Another is what I'm talking, it's more solving the problem they have right now. If the physician doesn't have the time to deal with all the outcomes, all the research, right? So they have these great ideas, but their clinical works already drag them into the day. How is it possible to work with them to help them make a better diagnosis or train some new models? Depends on outcomes. So that's my approach. Let's reduce all the frictions in the operation. But I know there's a lot of efforts here, but this one is also important. It's on my roadmap, but I'm not doing that right now.
Do you think the infrastructure is available to make that happen?
I think so. I think so. I do think so. At least from the data collections, in my previous works, I work at the IBM. So we used to manage like a 20 million patients. That's more like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And with all the big data, Hadoop, and you guys probably know Spark, you can scan entire cohort within couple minutes or even couple seconds. That's like 10 years ago. And all the data is there. So the way we collect or store the data, it's already there. So now the question is, what are you trying to solve? So that's I always, remind myself, even I went to the meetings, when I talk to the researchers, like, okay, share me the data, I will do something. But I always question why. What is the critical things we want to use the data to solving? I think all the technologies, large language model, RAG, agentic AI, even GPU, everything it's ready, but it's how and why, right? Why do we do this? There's, you probably know AI research is not cheaper, quite expensive, right? You need a GPU. You even use a RAG. You need a token, right? You may spend dollars to ChatGPT or Microsoft to use their models. All you run locally, you burn a GPU resource. So it should be very, very. I would say people. This is my suggestion. Be very sensitive. What do you want to achieve? And is that the goals? You just want to use the data to understand one of the tough disease, yes, do it, right? Drug discovery, do it. Or you just purely want to see that, oh, I have some kind of hypothesis. There's some correlations. Let me try this. And just be careful. So I'm not discouraging people to do it, but once you spend the GPU storage, when I train the Woollie, I know that. So this MSK, it's very generous to support all of this resource I'm burning. But if you want to pay the money to AWS to do, just to be careful.
Do you think that there would be a benefit to training Woolly in an outcomes-based way?
Um, I don't think so. I
Hmm.
don't think so. So even, it's probably surprise you. So I can be honest with you. It's like, at the beginning, we will play with this model. It's based on Llama, Meta's Llama 1. And I do shift the Llama 2, but now they have Llama 4. I don't know whether Llama 5 is coming. Llama model is the first open source models. And this is more like a proof of concept. And so there's a way you can embed domain knowledge into the tuning. There's lots of effort over there. You can see there's so many people involved in the project. But that's just 3 years ago,
Mhm.
not 3 years, 2.5 years probably. And so for this general models, ChatGPT, GPT 5.2, cloud, and DeepSeek, right? All the things they are doing pretty good. And even without training plus domain knowledge RAG, they are doing wonderful job. Um, unless you really think those data for the outcomes, and this one it's very, very closed source. Nobody can touch it. Let's say patient risk events. So that you're probably doing some kind of training or fine tune. So my suggestion is that just to use this open source model plus your domain knowledge will be move you faster than you train your model to understand more specific domain. That's my suggestion. Probably somebody disagree, but I think from my past experience, everything you do either burn all this GPU or cache, whatever you have, and should be very caution.
So your hypothesis is that the difference in accuracy would probably not be worth the additional effort.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Even I can retrain the Woollie with more, let's see, multimodality data, right? I use the text only, maybe for the latest version, let's see, based on Llama or maybe open source, this OSS 120 billion model from OpenAI. Suppose you can train, right? The model it's a heavy, more and more it's larger. To train it, it's so difficult. Even fine tune, even you use LoRa to train, it still take some kind of effort. I'm not talking about collect data. Let's assume data already collected, which we already done, right? Some kind of big institute already done. To train that and to fine tune it, and with all the different parameters, that's a lot of effort. Second, that the way you encode this domain knowledge probably already there, right? So why do you need to do this fine tune and which already there? Since the first papers, I start thinking this may not be the path to move forward. Even I can do it. I can just move the code that's train Llama 4. Yeah, sure. But for what? Right? So my accuracy probably bump from like a 92 to 94, like 96. I can get multimodalities, but you may find that's use GPT 5.2 plus your agent and plus your reg. It's already got like a 97, and you just pay the token, and you can build all this system within a day. With all the AI, co-pilot, right, cloud code, you can build all this within a day.
So, what is your intuition with regards to when to use a large language model, when to use the small language models that you're using for certain tasks now, and when to use reinforcement learning?
I feel that for the things I'm doing with administrative work, all these burdens, the operation frictions, I would say use the for the general available models plus agent plus reg. That should be sufficient.
Mhm.
That's what I believe, and that's my team is actually doing that. Um, to do some kind of like a fine tune in the middle, unless your data is really critical. You think this data will never see in the public domain. Very specific. Go for it. Right. So, but you have to be very careful. What do you want to solve? Is that just a classifications? You want to understand the cancer pathway or some kind of disease? So do it. I think of the reinforcement learnings. I would see that if you have multiple models and you want to compare or you want to make super intelligent, right? Maybe you want to find some kind of new diagnosis, new pathway, or maybe new drugs, right? I know there's some pharmaceutical company, they are doing this.
Mhm.
So that will be a lot of efforts to go that way. First of all, you need better data collection, right? You need a lot of a human because you're doing reinforcement learning. You need to give somebody thumbs up, thumbs down,
Mhm.
right? So you need somebody to teach it. Who is going to teach it? Either a model teach the model, a human teach the model.
Or you
Those
expect outcomes from the data.
right, the data. But who is the greater outcomes?
Yeah,
It's a human.
fair. Fair.
And how much data you need?
Mhm.
Right? So mostly, let's see, in my hospitals, not every patient has outcomes. I
Mhm.
would say most of the patients, they don't. Because when they have the outcomes, it's actually through some kind of protocols and some kind of clinical trials. We
Mhm.
actually collect a very, very detailed outcomes. We follow the patient for like a couple of years, but the more patients don't. Let's say I give you 200 patient, or maybe let's see 1,000 patient for one specific tumor, and the physician was this is the maximum patient I follow for the next five or for the previous 5 years. It's already a huge cohort.
Mhm.
Those data, do you think they're sufficient to train a large language model? Probably not.
Probably not.
Just 1,000 patient. Can you teach the model from this 1,000 patient know a lot? I know while the approach, we're talking with a smaller language model. Another one is how do you extract the information from smaller data set
Mhm.
rather than the big data set? I know there's a lot of the research also there. It's tough, so it's I would see that it's just reinforcement learning. It's great, but the quality of the data and the infrastructure and the resource devote that will be huge.
Brilliant. Annie, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. Really
So this is
appreciate
all this is all great questions. Well, first of all, I claim that this is my opinion. It's not, anything on behalf of MSK. It's purely my experience, deal with all the AIs and the datas and collaborated with all my coworkers, my physician friends next door. So I feel that so my group has some kind of advantage because we're embedded in the clinics. We know the frictions. Why? So the next my room it's my clinical friends. Just I can knock the door, so see this works, right? So we can build some things. That some things may not every data scientist or the AI researcher in the healthcare has. But I do see this is also giving me some kind of limitation. What I see is what happening in the cancer domain or within the radiation oncology domain. But I think some methods really be able to generically available to other subspecialties can be skill, such as recently we are working with the clinical trial matching.
Mhm.
All these ideas is actually not just for the radiation. It can be for medicine or radiologists or maybe pharmaceutical companies, but something to be maybe very specific. So I would see there's some kind of advantage, some kind of limitations. I like to work to everyone. So especially I enjoy my life to rotate in the clinics and shadow with the clinicians to talk to the patient. I like to hear their complaint. I need to have more clicks. I need to go to a different document. From their complaint, I feel the opportunities the teams can move their work more smoothly. So that I feel, this is very, very great at this moment with all the technology ready, infrastructure ready, and then the domain experts ready. And so all joined together, we can build something very useful.
That's very valuable experience to share.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Before you go, a quick note about the company I co founded, Private AI. We help organizations use their data safely so they can build compliant AI products, share data securely, and extract insights without the regulatory headaches. If PII, PHI, or PCI data are standing between you and your next innovation, visit private-ai.com. See you next time on the Data Frontier.